run-and-gun genre is a perfect palate cleanser after the summer of beat-em-ups. It's a proven fact that people who love beat-em-ups also love run-and-guns. And so, in this episode of The Big Retro Show, I'm going to talk about some of the arcade beat-em-ups that are lost in time, but you should totally play in 2022. The 80s and 90s were great times to be a kid. Join me as I dive into the world of movies, music, video games and toys, and explore what made these decades so great. This is The Big Retro Show. First up is Gun Force, Battle Fire Engulfed Terror Island, released in 1991 by Irem. Gun Force is one of those hidden gem run-and-guns that don't often get mentioned in conversations involving the genre. It's usually all about Contra and Metal Slug, but Gun Force deserves to be in the conversation as well. I first got to know this series with Gun Force 2, which I covered in my previous run-and-gun video, and instantly fell in love with the gameplay and graphical style. Gun Force is every bit as good as its sequel and has its own flavor that sets it apart. You play as a soldier who must take out an invading alien force. The action takes place on Terror Island and you quickly run into battle with your rapid-fire rifle to be met with heavy resistance from the enemy. But fear not, the game has tons of weapons and even vehicles and turrets you can commandeer to gain the upper hand. The combat in this game is extremely satisfying, but my one gripe is that it's tough as nails. This is because the game boasts one-hit deaths, much like Contra, and it gets challenging really quickly. The weapons you can use in this game range from lasers, to rapid-fire machine guns, to plasma launchers and a blowtorch. The enemies aren't too difficult to beat in this game, as the shooting can be pulled off in 8 directions. The bosses in Gun Force are impressive to fight, each having their weak point, and maybe 1 or 2 different turrets or other obstacles that must be taken out if you are going to get a clear shot at the weak spot. What I liked about this game is that you can jump into several different vehicles such as a tank or a turret to take out your enemies. This mixes up the gameplay quite a bit and is a welcome break from the normal run-and-gun stuff. The graphics in this game are sharp and crisp, and the music fits the mood of the game very well. You will be fighting in different outdoor and indoor settings, taking out wave after wave of enemies on foot and some in vehicles. It's a great time. The other thing that I like about this game is that it's short. You can breeze through the game in about half an hour. I love it when arcade games let you beat them in under an hour. Gun Force was ported over to the SNES and it's a pretty good port. It goes for $27 loose and $76 complete in box. Have you played this game? If imitation is a sincerest form of flattery, then Demon Front, released in 2002 by IGS, does a great job of flattering the Metal Slug series. The game looks and plays quite a bit like the Metal Slug games, but it does have some gameplay mechanics that set it apart. First off, instead of lobbing grenades at your enemies, you get a companion that flies at your side. Now, you can either use your companion to form a shield around you that is useful in avoiding the game's one-hit deaths, or you can do what I did for most of my playthrough, which is to charge the attack button and unleash your companion's special attack. The ape-like Maya's companion is a little pterodactyl whose special attack is a 3-way shot. Dr. J's companion is actually a robot who zaps his enemies with a special attack. Sarah's special companion uses an ice blast, and finally there's Jake, whose special companion uses a flamethrower attack. Aside from their companions, each hero plays the same and can pick up a variety of different weapons throughout the game's 6 stages. Your special weapon use is limited, and if you get up close to your enemy, you can do a melee attack. One major way this game differs from Metal Slug is that you can't crawl into vehicles to blast your enemies. This was one of the most enjoyable aspects of the Metal Slug games, and it's a shame that you can't do it in Demon Front. One thing that I am happy that they didn't include in this game from the Metal Slug games are the POWs. They were super annoying. The lack of vehicles though isn't a good reason to brush this game off. I mean, just look at it. It's gorgeous and the music and sounds are just as good. The bosses in this game are equally impressive and capture the whole look and feel of the Metal Slug games. The game gets a little bit more bullet hellish towards the end of the game, and you will be dropping a lot of quarters in to keep the fun going. This is definitely a game that anyone who loves run and guns should play at least once. Sadly, this game did not receive any home ports, but it totally should have. One of the things that I love most about the run and gun genre is that it works in so many different types of games. Gunhara is a good example of an overhead run and gun that fits the bill. Released in 1995 by Banpresto, Gunhara is a game that plays similar to games like Mercs and Shock Troopers. You play as one of two warriors who are tasked with rescuing kidnapped children and taking out the bad guys. The game never made it to the US, and so the story is in Japanese. At any rate, it really doesn't matter. You are tasked to kill things, and that's all I care about. You can take on the game's 6 missions by running around and shooting everything that moves. You can either shoot in the direction you are facing or lock your position, which allows you to strafe by pushing and holding the fire button. I found this to be extremely helpful. The game also gives you a bomb attack that grants you limited invincibility and unleashes your might on your enemy. You can also do a spinning kick as your melee attack, but I hardly used it through my playthrough. The weapons in this game are pretty standard. There's a shotgun, rockets, a laser attack, and a Vulcan gun. The cool thing about Gunhara is that you can power up your weapons, which makes them more devastating. Most of the game takes place in an overhead perspective with you running around and shooting things, but in the second stage you hop on a motorcycle and take out enemies in a vertical shooter stage. I love it when games break up the action like this, and I wish that Gunhara would have done more of this. During one point in the game, you can hop on a mech and reap death among your foes. The mech doesn't last long though because your enemies are relentless. Like the games I mentioned previously, this is a one-hit death type of game. As you progress through the stages, the game becomes more bullet hellish and you will be pumping tons of quarters into this game. The other difficult thing about this game is that although it lets you continue, you must continue at the beginning of the stage unless you reach a boss. Then and only then does the game allow you to continue at the boss stage. It's a difficult game but entirely doable. The graphics and sound in this game are actually pretty good, and on par with games of the era. If you like run and gun games, you owe it to yourself to play Gunhara. The game was not ported to any home consoles. I love me a good gangster flick, but I love video games featuring gangsters even more. Released in 1992, Taito's Dead Connection is an arena-style run-and-gun that sort of plays like an interactive shooting gallery set in the days when the Mafia was running wild. You play as one of 4 heroes who sets out to take revenge on the mob family who gunned down their friend. Using sadness and revenge, and I'm not kidding, this is a line that the game uses, the foursome sets out to destroy the Mafia, whose leader bears a slight resemblance to another famous mob boss. The game totally takes its influences from movies like The Untouchables and The Godfather. In Dead Connection, you and a friend take on 8 stages full of wise guys that you need to take out to extract your sweet, sweet revenge. Each stage is prefaced by a story narrative that sets the stage for the murder you are about to commit. The game actually tells you how many enemies you have to take on in advance. I kinda like this. The game's controls are simple. One button shoots, the other lets you do a dive to avoid enemies. If you get too close to your enemies, which you will, you can pull off a punch and take them out. That's it. There's nothing too complex about this game. It's just mindless fun, and I'm okay with that. The game's environments are destructible, and you will want to aim your gun every now and then at them, because this is how you get new weapons and bonus items. The weapons in this game consist of a Tommy gun, shotgun, and an automatic pistol you can use to take fools out with. One of the things that I like about this game is that there are no one-hit deaths. When you get low on health, you can eat a hot dog or a bazillion of them. Sort of like Joey Chestnut. The game is littered with them. Anyhow, after taking out the requisite number of bad guys, you get to face off against a tougher bad guy who usually goes down pretty easy and comes flanked with 2 other goons. This game is short and will take you under 1 hour to beat. I must say though that this game is fair, allowing you to continue from where you fell and providing you many a hot dog to replenish your life. Still, the game becomes a bit more easier with a friend. This is a game that I purposely left out of the episode that I did on Taito games because I knew that I was going to make this episode and wanted to include it. Sadly, Dead Connection did not receive any home ports, so if you see it in the wild, which you probably won't being that it's one of the most uncommon arcade games in existence, drop some quarters in it. I first stumbled upon Biomechanical Toy at this year's California Extreme Arcade and Pinball Show held over the summer, and I instantly fell in love with it. The game is a colorful side-scrolling run-and-gun that plays a lot like Metal Slug. Released in 1995 by Galco, who also made another great run-and-gun called Big Carnat, Biomechanical Toy is considered one of the rarest games in existence, and I feel lucky to have been able to play it in the wild. As the story goes, a rogue toy named Scrubby has stolen a magical pendulum guarded by Relic, the Cuckoo Clock. Scrubby plans to use the pendulum to take revenge against his fellow toys. You play as this Razor Ramon looking dude named Inguz, who must stop Scrubby and his henchmen. The game's controls are basic. You get a shoot and jump button to brave the game's stages. Gotta love simplicity. Each stage is full of different types of toys and creatures to take out. They aren't too difficult, but there's some strategy involved and some platforming. The game doesn't have much in the way of weapons. Aside from your basic gun, you can find a rapid-fire machine gun and a stronger shotgun, and that's about it. It's not a big deal that there aren't more weapons in this game, but it would have added something. The other thing that this game is missing is a grenade attack. As the game becomes more difficult in the later stages, a grenade or two would have helped even the odds some. You do get a screen clearing attack if you find a bomb icon, but those are few and far between. One of the things that this game has going for it though is its life bar. No one-hit deaths. You replenish your life by shooting balloons and collecting the fruit and other food that fall out. The game also has various food items sprinkled throughout the levels. I like it when run-and-guns do this, because nobody, and I do mean nobody, likes playing a game where one bullet can kill you. The game also lets you free toy prisoners who become your allies and fight alongside of you for a short period of time. It's pretty cool because each of them have their own powers. I wish they would have stayed a little bit longer though. The bosses in this game are actually a lot of fun to fight and aren't too cheap at all. It helps that the game allows you to continue the fight at full health, but it doesn't grant the full health back to the boss, so beating them is a cinch. That is, if you have enough quarters. The game's graphics are beautiful and colorful, and I love them. The sounds and music in this game are just as good, although I could hear that they used a lot of compression for some of the tracks. It's not a deal breaker though. I think that the music fits the game very well. This game is short and took me about 45 minutes to complete. If you love run-and-gun games, I highly recommend you play this game. And that's gonna do it for today's episode of The Big Retro Show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing, dropping a comment, and leaving a like. And I will see you next time on The Big Retro Show.